Welcome to Laya Commenda. It's very, very nice to have you here. Laya's coming to speak at the Barcelona Journaling Festival, and she's a positive psychology expert, writing therapist, poet, and entrepreneur. Her work lives at the intersection of writing, narrative practice, and neuroscience. And she's the creator of Deep Journaling Method, which she teaches internationally. And I've already had the pleasure of speaking to you a couple of times now. And every time it just feels like joy and fun.
Oh, that's
So
good to hear.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So the first thing I want to talk to you about is a little bit about your starting point in journaling. So what drew you into journaling, and if it's like a specific time period or circumstances or like a singular event.
Yeah. I started writing long before I had the word journaling and before it became popular. So even as a school kid, I loved playing with writing and changing my way of writing and the letters of my writing and writing in different colors. So there was always like something I loved about it. I loved about pen and paper. And then I did the typical things like diaries, writing diaries about my life. And then at a certain point, I entered a real profound life crisis in my late 20s and early 30s after my son was born and I got divorced. A story like everyone has one of these stories, sort of big life crisis of my biography. And then I began to really like vomit on the page, and all my pain and all my trauma and drama, everything landed on the page. And of course, like everyone does, it's very relieving. There is someone you can talk to, you can share your deepest feelings with. And I think everybody who has ever done that knows how healing it can feel and healing it actually is. So I worked through that big loss and this big life crisis with journaling, with writing. And then at one point, I started to teach journaling methods and then became a writing therapist and a poetry therapist because I wanted to understand. I knew it's working, but I wanted to know why. What's the science behind it? Why does it have these effects on us? And then I started positive psychology. And then I started to immerse myself in neuroscience because I was so fascinated by how this all works together, um, psychology and neuroscience and writing. And I remember this moment when I sat on my chair that you can see, but it's here. It's here. Like here, I have my vision picture, my painting that a friend of mine did for me for going to Australia, which I did. And then there's this chair. And I sat on this chair and I could watch myself, like observe myself, how my synapses started sparkling and rewire. And all of a sudden, everything came together, positive psychology and neuroscience and the science of writing. And then that was when deep journaling was born. And it was I don't lie, it was one of the happiest moments of my life because it's kind of integrated and everything started to make so much sense. And from that, I developed the methodology that I'm teaching today.
So can you say like quite briefly because I'm curious about that change of like how your journaling was before and then after, let's say. Like in a and more in like in a practical sense, like how did your daily journaling practice change
Oh,
specifically?
yeah. So what it was before was kind of processing. So I process my emotions, I process what has happened to me, my thinking, and that's what we call basically expressive writing, which is very well researched by Pennebaker and many more to come after him. And that's the processing aspect of journaling and writing. And then you can move on to something what we could call progressing, like very intentionally with a certain goal of I want to progress. I don't only want to process and express and feel relief and kind of sort my thoughts and feelings. But I want to progress with a certain kind of goal or direction. This is, for example, in positive journaling that was developed by Megan Hayes and others in this field, also with the movement of positive psychology. They said, well, or Laura King, let's say, she is my hero, by the way, because we had this real enormous body of research about expressive writing, about trauma or upsetting things that happened to us in the past. And then Laura King said it and said, well, do we really know that the benefits of that is that we process these things that have happened to us? Or is it the writing itself? Or could we maybe write about something positive of the future, like our best possible self? And she did this research. And it worked. So we see that we don't always have to process difficult things in order to have the benefits of journaling and writing. And
Yeah.
from there, many other studies followed and other researchers followed, and we have this progressing aspect. So and that's what I also use, also in my daily practice. For example, gratitude practice and using positive emotions in my writing. So in my morning practice, for example, I call it write the tune. It's a 7-step journaling morning practice. And the first thing is you write a little gratitude note to a friend or a mentor or someone who doesn't even know you, who wrote a book that really inspired you. Sometimes I send it, sometimes I don't. So it's just for shifting my emotional and mental state in the beginning of this practice. So this is the progressing part of it. And then the next step is the becoming part or self-authorship. And that's how I work mainly now with components or principles and methodologies from narrative practice, narrative theory,
Mhm.
positive psychology, and neuroplasticity, and it's very identity based. So who do I become? And this version of me, how would she think? How would she feel? How would she act now? So it's much less about the past and much more about the future and self-authorship and becoming self-agency and becoming the architect of your life and your future.
I love that.
So
Amazing.
as an example, also in this morning practice, write the tune, there's one part that says eagle and ant. So I get the eagle view and I say, well, who do I want to be in 1 year or in 5 years? And then the ant says, but which baby steps can I do today to go like a little bit, a tiny step further towards his vision or his goal?
Yeah, I think this is for me one of the most crucial things, really, that it's so easy to have these big dreams and big ideas, but unless we turn it into something that is pragmatic and practical, we end up, um, I think we end up experiencing this huge gap between what we think and what we have these goals and dreams of, and then we see our reality doesn't match it, right? So those small steps gives us like, um, in many ways, it's like proof that we are able to move forwards, right?
And I think we all experience this pain of this gap. And there is like in the London Tube, it's like mind the gap. And that's what I very often say to my clients or participants, like mind the gap. Yes, you have like downloaded this vision, but don't expect it to like be manifested tomorrow. Mind the gap. And then again, we can go to metacognition and look at this gap and guide ourselves through this process with our frustrations maybe and with our doubt. So how do we interpret this gap? What do we make it mean? Do we make it mean it's not working, or do we make it mean, oh yeah, this is exactly the gap that should be there. The frustration should be there. The self-doubt should be there. And it's all material I can work with.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think, but that's really interesting, isn't it? That kind of instead of just allowing something to be there, but having that willingness to investigate it, right? And be really brutal about it and say, well, why is this gap there? Because at least once you have an understanding, then it's possible to move beyond it.
And also investigation is the beginning, I would say, is a starting point, like being very curious rather than being self-judgmental. But
Yeah. Mhm.
Then we have to understand this, that we talked about that. Like investigation and exploring and understanding is just the first step. We have to realize that this self doubt, for example, is a programming, is coming from our survival mode, and it will always be there. And we can investigate it and understand it, but it will not change until we really rewrite and rewire, which means really coding something different in our thinking, in our neural architecture. And that's really important because these patterns, for example, of procrastination and self-doubt or imposter syndrome, it's hardwired somewhere in our really in our brains. And what we know from neuroplasticity is that it will never help to say, let go of it. No, because it's wired in there. The only chance we have is to code something else, to establish and strengthen other new neural pathways. And by pruning, that's what we call it in neuroplasticity, the more we strengthen that, the less powerful the old wiring will be. So that's rewrite and rewire.
Yeah. I mean, I was working on this myself in my own way, and I think one of the realization was exactly what you're saying, that it doesn't disappear, but once you're aware of what it is, instead of being the truth, it becomes a version of me that no longer is helpful, right?
Absolutely. And
And then
I like the concept of version of me, like being very empathetic and self-compassionate. Yes, of course, this version of me, it was like it protected me. Of course, it's coming from somewhere. But
yeah,
rather than after once you have understood, you do not have to understand it even deeper. It's like very often, I don't know if you know this parable, what the Buddha was teaching. Like if someone shoots an arrow on poisoned arrow on you, you can of course spend lots of lifetime in, oh, where did it come from, and who shot that at me, and why, and from which angle, or you can just like pull the arrow out, which is maybe a better approach. Yeah. So I do not at all disrespect the reflecting and the understanding part. I think it's absolutely necessary. But at one point, it can become almost addictive or a pattern of avoidance, procrastination.
and I think also, like, the fact you're talking about it being hardwired, it also means in many ways that it's a losing battle to fight it, right? And I think this is part of the problem that a lot of people have. There's this sense of, like, want to get rid of this part of myself. I want to get rid of this part, instead of actually saying, well, let's just understand each other
Yeah,
and move
absolutely.
forward with a bit more balanced relationship.
Yeah, and that's really understanding that it's there for a reason. It helped us to survive in our childhood. That's one part. And also, like, if you see it like the humankind, how we evolved, of course, these patterns helped us to survive and to evolve as a species. But we live in very different times now, and we have to manage our survival mode. And like from survival to thriving, from survive to thrive. This is like, can I switch from there to there? Understand what's my survival mode, what's my amygdala in alarm mode, and what's like my prefrontal cortex that says, well, but there is more than surviving to this life, hopefully. And how do we get there to our best life? Yeah.
No, no, I think this is so important part for me as well. Yeah, exactly. I love that. Like, because you can spend the rest of your life investigating everything and you still won't change. And I know this from my own experience, like this kind of desire to
Yeah.
figure it all out and then everything will be solved. So,
Yeah, I think there is a phase for everything, but I'm 53 now, so for me, definitely it's time to I still reflect, obviously, but, like, creating rather than reflecting is where I am now, and what I'm teaching is how can I create and how can I, rewire instead of repeating? Because at a certain point with the reflection and the understanding, we really carve this identity of I'm hurt, I'm broken, something's wrong with me into our coding, let's say, a neural pathway. So it's really sometimes even strengthening the identity that leads the behavior, for example, or the emotional blueprint that we kind of want to transform or overcome.
No, no, absolutely. I think one thing you mentioned earlier, this whole idea of identity, right? And I think with time, like you're talking about being 53, I'm just 48 now, and I've realized this, that there's this difference between when you step back and you see things and you create these connections. It's easier to then also look at the fact that that's not the only connection, right? That's just the current connection that I'm making. And I realized for myself, like this realization that I can't trust myself because I know that yesterday I felt differently than I do today. So yesterday I would make different kind of connections and drawing up this map of who I am. And I realized, well, if I'm feeling great, then I'm going to remember different things to when I feel shit, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like our emotions, as we know from positive psychology, with the broaden and build effect, like emotions are data, and they shape our perception of the world, what's going on around us. We know that like a minimal part of what's really going on, we really perceive, and we that enters our system, and all the other things we don't even, not even unconsciously. So, how we shape our identity will always shape how our perception filters work in our brains. And how our perception filters work will shape how we experience what we call reality, which really doesn't exist, basically. And then we have confirmation bias. Of course, if I think of myself as someone, let's say, who is chaotic or is not self disciplined, we will always collect proof for that. Or if we identify with someone who is just not having troubles to form or create intimate relationships that are fulfilling, we will every behavior of anybody else will be proof for that, because we are biased, and our brain will always, always, always create experiences that prove our bias right. So we have to rewrite and overwrite our old biases. Yeah.
And it always feels true. This is part of the problem.
That's the thing, like our minds are really tricky in selling us. So this really, when I did my master's in positive psychology and I did this research project with was like 4 groups, I think, and each group I had 5 workshops with a process of like transforming identity, and there was one part of it where I taught participants and guided them through a journaling process where they could really distinct between facts and what is my interpretation, what is my story. And there was a psychotherapist that I knew very well in one of these groups, and she said, "Well, but there is a fact that there were secrets in my family." When I was a child, there were always secrets in my family, and I'm really carrying that with me. There are always like somehow bad secrets in my family. And I said, "Well, what's the fact?" And she said, "Yeah, the fact is there were secrets in my family." And I said, "Well, but if someone came with a video camera when you were a child and took a video of that, would you see on this video that there were secrets in your family? What could we see on this video?" And she said, "Yeah, well, my parents, sometimes in the afternoon, they locked themselves in the living room and the kids were out in the garden or something." And it's your interpretation that there were secrets in the family. The fact is just like maybe your parents needed time for themselves. Something like that. Maybe they were kissing behind the locked doors and not sharing some secrets or having some discussions. Who knows? It was your interpretation as a kid, and that's like not the fact, like developed into problems you're having now, but your interpretation and the script that was coded in your thought patterns, in your beliefs, in your neural architecture. So it's really, as you said, it sounds so true, and we have really told ourselves the same story again and again and again, and of course we think that's true, but it isn't.
Yeah. No. Now, the beauty is in exactly that point, isn't it? When you kind of rewrite and reinterpret it and realize that these facts could just as easily be seen as something different. But the problem lies in the fact that the previous interpretation is what is the cornerstone of my identity.
Exactly. It's our
Like,
narrative. It's that's what really shapes our identity. But the good news is, I mean, some of those stories are super helpful, but many of them aren't. And the good news is we can rewrite them and rewrite our stories. Yeah.
tell me about one transformation, personal transformation that you would highlight from your practice.
Okay. So I think one of the most important one was that I had a yoga and writer studio for 7 years. And it was not successful in the way that I wanted it to be. And, in the end, when we closed it, it was kind of frustrating, and it really shaped the self-image of myself, that I was not a good entrepreneur, that I was a good teacher and and workshop facilitator and all the things. I was not doubting that, but I really thought, well, but the entrepreneurial side of it, I'm just not carved out for it. I'm too much of too empathetic, and I just don't have like the drive for it. And I hate tough conversations, and I hate having to deal with finances. And I told myself this story. This is just not for me. Like real entrepreneurship with a big team. And I had to work a lot on that, like not to seeing myself as a failure and not to identify with, okay, there was one business that was not as successful as I would have wanted it to be. And there were frustrations and there were conflicts, but not let that mean that I'm not made for entrepreneurship and that I cannot be a successful business owner as well as a poet and someone who teaches writing and journaling. So having both and like integrating both. So I used my own methodology to rewrite that story that I initially told myself that I have failed and that I'm not carved out for also having a fulfilling work and a successful business.
Yeah. That's real identity shift, right?
Yeah, true. And everything comes from identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going back to the festival, what can people expect from their session when they come to see you in Barcelona?
Yeah, they can expect sparkling synapses. I don't even know how to pronounce synapses correctly in English. Is it synapses or synapses? Tell me.
Call it synapses as well, but that
Synapses.
doesn't necessarily.
Thank
I'm half English, half Norwegian. I get lost in all these things. I'm like,
good.
my
But
general attitude is understand what you mean. That's good enough.
okay, good. So, on the one hand, I would really have to inspire people to look at journaling from this self-authoring and becoming point of view. And to also understand a bit of neuroplasticity and neuroscience, what journaling, writing with hand, with a certain methodology or technique, what happens in our brains, in our neural architecture. But also, I, of course, want people to experience it. So, of course, there will be kind of a practice, a short practice that I really love, and that within 3 minutes, it really shifts your mental and emotional state, what we could call frequency. Yeah. So, and to really experience it, how that then shapes the way you perceive the world, the way you think, you feel, and how easy it can be. With you don't have to write morning pages for 3 pages or 20 minutes, or maybe a short 3 minute intervention journaling practice can really lift you up and make your thinking like more creative, more innovative, and you switch from problem focus to potential, for example, or from a self image that's based on, oh, I failed, I've made mistakes in the past, to what there's so much to celebrate about myself. So that's what I really want people to experience, not only in a theoretical way, but also in a practical way.
Yeah, that's great. This is really funny because like the practical aspect of it has been key for us when we've been inviting people in to speak. Like we do not want people to sit for 90 minutes and listen to somebody have a lecture. This is it's a journaling festival, not a conference on the theory of journaling.
promise it will not only be a lecture. Also, I think the theory can be very, very fascinating. So I think there will be a bit of theory about neuroplasticity, but of course, I try to, communicate it as entertaining as possible.
Uh, I'd love to hear what your thoughts were the first time you heard about the concept of a journaling festival.
Oh, of course, I fell in love with it. What else? A friend of mine who I'm also collaborating with because she produces beautiful journals from Vienna. She told me about it, and she was there in Barcelona. And she said, "Well, it was so amazing. It was like a big family, and everything like buzzing and so inspiring." And then I, of course, checked out your social accounts and your website, and there was a call for speakers to apply, and of course I did that. I love Barcelona. I loved your vibe, the vibe of the festival, and I'm super, super happy to join you this year.
I'm really looking forward to seeing you in person, like after these on-screen meetings, which never feels quite the same, but it'll be fantastic
Yeah, will be super fun to meet in Barcelona in early November.
in November. Not too long now. Jesus. It's exactly 3 months now.
Oh, yeah, it's true. Today is
Yeah.
the 7th. Yeah,
Today,
I
7th, so exactly 3 months. So
can
7
count the days.
now the now it's crunch time for us.
For you, the real, real intense phase is starting now. I can relax, just fly
Yes.
in.
Yeah, and it's also really beautiful because we start to see how it's shaping together, you know? Like it's really nice to kind of we're seeing the red thread that goes through it and things start landing much more, you know?
And also, like in a community like this, it's well, there may be speakers, but it's always like inspiring each other and teaching each other. And I always learn so much from my students and my participants, and being like in a community. As you once said, like is they already everybody loves writing and journaling already. So you do not have to explain to anyone. It's just like you go right into a conversation. It's very often so inspiring.
Yeah, and I think there's also an aspect that we kind of made conscious decisions around with the festival as well, was this idea that in a community you don't separate people between this kind of these are the people who are lecturing and teaching and these are the people who are consuming. So at the event everybody's sitting together and it feels like instead of being we're all here to listen to these masters and learn, it's the fact that we're all here in different practices and different stages of our writing and actually say like, well, this is how a community is, right?
And writing can be so much, and journaling can be so many different things with different approaches, and none of them is better than the other. It's just like, wow, there is such a variety and so many things to explore and to experience. And like as someone who is trained in writing therapy and poetry therapy, it's like the sharing, the act of journaling, and also like from a neuro scientific perspective, like this is something that really, really, really makes the rewiring so much more than if we sit somewhere alone and then journal for ourselves, which is immensely valuable, obviously. But writing together in community, sharing and caring, witnessing each other, being inspired by each other, that's what really makes things stick in your neural pathways.
Yeah, that's interesting as well. I always found it fascinating with group work because somebody who might be really quiet is then listening to somebody else sharing something and then that quiet person realizes that oh shit, I'm not crazy after all.
Yeah,
There's somebody else dealing with similar shit to me.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let me jump into some quick fire questions for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah. This is let's see how this goes. Your journaling, is it more a brain dump or is it prompt based?
Prompt based.
Fountain pen or ballpoint pen?
Fountain.
Joy journaling or shadow work?
What was the first thing?
Joy journaling.
Both.
Both. You're cheating now, but I'll let you get
No, no, that was a correct answer, no? I'm not about either or. I'm always
it.
about
Typing or pen and paper?
what was that?
Typing or pen and paper?
Oh, of course, pen and paper. Of
Mm,
course, of course. Something very different happens in the brain.
mm. Morning or evening?
Both. Sorry, again. Or no either.
With with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine?
Both. Not at the same time,
I mean,
generally.
in a buzzing cafe or in quiet solitude?
Both. But I love buzzing cafes. I love journaling in cafes,
Uh,
actually. So I'll say cafe.
mhm. Daily ritual or spontaneous offloading?
Daily ritual is very, very important. Spontaneous offloading is becoming less usual for me because there's not so much need anymore.
Actually, we should have done the same set of questions like 15 years ago versus now,
Yeah,
right?
exactly, exactly. That would be a nice approach to really see where I'm at now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
This
Daily
part.
practice. Mhm.
Mm. Okay, one last question. What's the strangest place you've ever done some journaling?
Well, let me think. Let me think. Um, the strangest place where I've been journaling. Oh, maybe yes, I know where it was. It was maybe it's not strange, but it was in the Sahara in Morocco, and I was there at sunrise, and there were two dogs following me, and I was a bit scared of them, but I still sat in the sand and did some journaling there. I loved that.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That were a great questions. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to meet you in
And
person.
just want to say to everybody listening, we're just going to be amazing to see Laya and everybody else at the festival. Um, it's coming soon, and I'm getting more and more excited. I'm just remembering now more and more what it was like at last year's festival. It takes me a long time to get to the point where I'm ready to do it again.
Yeah, I guess
Now,
so.
like, having these conversations with people like you and realizing that, you know what, this is going to be another absolutely amazing festival. So I
Yeah,
can't
thank you also for doing all the work. I know, like, events like that, like, you not always see that, but, I'm very aware of how much work it is in the details and everything and what it requires of a team. So really thank you for creating something beautiful like that.
thank you. And then I'll see you at on the 7th and 8th of November
Yes.
in Barcelona.
See you,
Thank
but
you very much for joining me, Lyle.
thank you for having me.